How does a person go from running a neighborhood like a little kingdom to being the punchline in 10 days? It started with a click, the harmless click of my garage remote after a long Thursday. And when the door rolled up, I wasn't staring at my tool bench or the bikes. I tuned for the kids next door. I was staring at a white Audi sitting dead center in my garage like it paid the mortgage. I killed the engine and just stood there, because sometimes your brain needs a minute to catch up to the disrespect. Then the interior door opened, and in walked Patricia Morell, Sharp Bob. Sharper voice president of the Timberview HOA, saying Marcus Street. Parking violates community standards after 6. Your garage was empty and your side door was unlocked, so I used it temporary situation. I laughed that short kind of laugh. That's not about humor, more like, are you serious right now? Unlocked equals invitation. That was the logic, and if you've ever dealt with someone who confuses authority with ownership, you know the feeling bubbling up in my chest. But I looked past her and saw my suitcase at the top of the stairs, 10 days booked in Belize, and something in me cooled instead of boiled. If you think this is acceptable, we'll see how acceptable it feels by next week, I said. Not yelling, not threatening, just pressing the wall switch. So the door rumbled down like a curtain, locking the interior door with a clean click, rolling my suitcase out the front while she shouted bylaws through a closed door. You know what I mean. Sometimes the quiet move is the loudest one. Belize smelled like salt and mangoes, and every time my phone buzzed on that little balcony, I knew it wasn't work. It was Patricia discovering there are some problems. A rule book can't fix. Marcus, this is inappropriate. Marcus, release my vehicle. Marcus, legal action pending, and every voicemail looked the same on my lock screen before I slid it left and hit delete. Back home, the story started walking on its own legs. Her husband, Greg, did the math and rubbed his forehead like it hurt our treasurer, Eloise, still in scrubs from a night shift. Told Patricia the line no one in power likes to hear. Spirit of the community is not a key, it's his garage full stop. Day 2. Walt, the retired fire captain, parked a lawn chair across from my driveway and called it Garage Watch. A couple cold beers, a couple neighbors, the kind of gentle heckling that grows out of years of notes about trash cans left out for an extra hour. Day 3, she tried to hire Trey the handyman to quietly pop my side door, and he laughed so hard he almost dropped his drill, ma'am. I like my freedom. Day 4. She walked into the precinct to file something that sounded like kidnapping for a car, and the desk sergeant asked 2 questions that changed the weather. Did he force you to park there? No. Was the door unlocked? Yes. Then said, this isn't a crime. It's a consequence. By day 5, the neighborhood had a rhythm. A paper plate taped to her mailbox reading reserved parking. A chalk rectangle on her driveway with a toy SUV parked inside. Not cruel, so much as tired. Because when people have been squeezed for a long time, there's relief in seeing the squeezer stuck for once. And yeah, that happened. Meanwhile, I was learning how to do nothing. Toes buried in warm sand, listening to the water behave like it has for 1,000,000 years. Talking with Lena from Ohio, who teaches middle school science. She teased me because I kept flipping my phone over, and she'd say, "How's the soap opera back in North Carolina?" And I'd raise my bottle and say, "To natural consequences, because silence can be a teacher if you give it 10 days. Back in Timberview, the board meeting at Eloise's house sounded like a scene I'd been waiting to see. Patricia calling it vehicle detainment. Pauline asking where the Audi was parked tonight. Valet and the room cracking in a way rooms crack. When people realize fear isn't the only option, Eloise saying the words that put a pin in it, leadership isn't control. And when Patricia tried to adjourn, they kept talking without her, which was new. Day 8 was the twist that made the group chat light up. She marched over with a screwdriver, jammed it into the seam of my garage, and started prying, while 2 teenagers filmed from across the street. The cruiser rolled up, and Officer Ramirez stepped out steady as a summer pond. Is Morel HOA rules? Don't override private property. What you're doing is attempted breaking and entering. Step away from the door, and the screwdriver clattered to the concrete as she speed-walked home with her jaw locked and her cheeks burning because the badge backed the boundary. You know what I mean. Some lessons land because an authority you respect says the quiet part out loud. By day 10, my rideshare turned the corner, and it looked like a block party without a grill. Porch lights on a Walt had added 2 more chairs. A couple kids sat cross-legged on the curb like they were watching a show. I set my suitcase down on the kitchen tile I laid last spring, took a breath, picked up the remote, and pressed it. The door rattled up and the Audi blinked in the light like a deer between trees, dust on the hood, otherwise exactly how she left it. Applause rolled across the cul-de-sac. Not a stadium roar, more like the exhale when a plane touches down in rough weather. And then Patricia came clicking across the street on those heels, like an approaching storm front. Marcus Hale enough is enough. Release my car, and I leaned on the jamb and said, "Looks like it's already released, Pat." All you had to do was wait. You have no idea what I endured this week. The disrespect. The humiliation. And I heard myself answer in a voice I almost didn't recognize because it was so calm. A taste of your own recipe, years of notes and fines and photos of trash cans. You decided my house was your solution because it was convenient for you. That's not leadership. That's entitlement in a polo shirt. She looked for backup, found lawn chairs and quiet faces. Greg stood on their grass like a man reading weather. I walked into the garage, sat in my driver's seat, hit the remote, so the door rolled down. And laughter rippled, hit it again so it rose. Opened the Audi, set the keys on the dashboard, and met her at the edge where concrete meets street. Here is your car, and before you turn the key, hear me, respect is not something you collect with a clipboard. People hand it to you when you see them. You don't demand it. You earn it. For a heartbeat, she looked human. Hair a little frayed, breath a little short. Then she took the keys with a hand that shook, backed out 20 feet, parked in her own driveway, and went inside. Greg followed the block, exhaled again. Kids got back on their bikes. Walt lifted his can like a quiet toast, and I went in and sat down. Not triumphant, just relieved that I hadn't let anger drive the car. The next morning sounded different. Elaine's wind chime, a basketball thudding without anyone scrambling to hide it. No little notes tucked under doormats like citations from a private court. And around 10, Greg walked over with his cap in his hands and his eyes on his shoes, Marcus. I told her not to do it. She doesn't listen to me. And I said, I didn't lock that door to punish her. Arguing with her is like pushing a rope. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is let the consequence breathe. From here on, the garage stays off limits. He laughed for real for the first time I'd heard, and we shook on it. That evening, Patricia took a slow loop in the Audi, like she was testing gravity. Folks noticed, but nobody performed. She pulled in and went inside without a scene, and I sat with a cup of coffee that tasted like peace and thought about how power built on fear has a short warranty. What I wanted for her, and for all of us, was the kind of leadership that sees people as neighbors, not chess pieces. Was I petty locking the door and hopping a flight? Maybe. But I stayed within my rights. And more than that, I let the neighborhood do the math in public, cause-effect choice consequence, and people drew their own conclusions without me having to pound a podium. You know what I mean, so tell me straight in the comments. Was I wrong to lock the garage and leave? Did I teach a lesson, or just pour gas on a fire? Are HOAs protecting neighborhoods or protecting egos? Have you seen entitlement? Put on a badge and call itself order. Drop your take, push back. If you need to share the story that still sticks under your skin, and if this made you feel a little less alone, hit subscribe. Send it to the friend who's tired of being told to relax when someone crosses their line, and keep your boundaries right where they belong.